Vena stood at the edge of the royal balcony, staring at the Xel'Orath warriors training below. They moved with power, their weapons slicing through the air with deadly precision. The sound of metal clashing and the roar of victorious fighters echoed across the grand arena. She clenched her fists. That world was not for her. Born as the only daughter of King Torvek, the ruler of the mighty Xel'Orath Empire, Vena should have been strong, like her father, like her brothers, like every warrior of her kind. But she was weak. Her body lacked the thick muscles of her people. Her reflexes were slow, her strikes dull. While others trained in combat from childhood, she struggled to even lift a sword. The Xel'Orath were a race of conquerors, feared across the galaxy. To them, strength was everything. And she had none. Pathetic, she whispered to herself. She turned away from the sight below, but a deep voice stopped her. "You are wasting time watching them," her father said, stepping onto the balcony. His towering figure cast a shadow over her. His armor gleamed in the sunlight, the scars on his face telling stories of countless battles. "You will never be like them." Vena bit her lip but did not respond. It was the truth. She had heard it all her life. From this day forward, the king continued, "You will leave the capital. You will stay at the outpost on Yara 9. You are of no use to me here." Her heart sank. The outpost was nothing more than a remote station, far from the Empire's center. A place for rejects and failures. She had hoped for a chance to prove herself, but her father had already decided. Without another word, the king turned and left. That night, Vena sat alone in her chambers. She wanted to scream, to break something, to fight back. But what good would it do? The king's word was final. The next day, she boarded a transport ship bound for Yara 9. Yara 9 was nothing like the royal palace. It was a dull, lifeless station, surrounded by rocky wastelands. The soldiers here were not the Empire's finest. They were either wounded veterans or low-ranked officers with no future. Vena felt like she had been sent to a graveyard. She walked through the metallic corridors, her footsteps echoing in the empty halls. The few warriors she passed barely acknowledged her presence. To them, she was nothing, a weak princess exiled by her own father. She clenched her fists. There had to be a way to change that. Then she heard something unusual. A voice, not Xel'Orath, but human. Curious, she followed the sound and found herself standing outside a small holding cell. Inside, a lone figure sat against the wall, a human male. Vena had seen humans before, mostly as prisoners or slaves, but this one was different. He looked calm, relaxed, almost as if he wasn't locked inside a cage. His short brown hair was unkempt, his uniform torn, but his sharp eyes studied her with curiosity. "You're not like the others," he said, his voice steady. Vena frowned. "What do you mean?" "The other Xel'Orath stare at me with hate," the human said with a smirk. "You look lost." Vena stiffened. She didn't like how easily he read her. "What is your name, human?" "Daniel," he replied. "And you?" She hesitated for a moment before answering. "Vena." Daniel tilted his head. "The king's daughter." She narrowed her eyes. "You know of me." He chuckled. "I've been in this cell for a long time. You hear things, like how the great King Torvek has a daughter who is different." Anger flared in her chest. "I am not weak," she snapped. Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Then prove it." Vena was about to leave when his words stopped her. "Prove it? How?" No one had ever given her a chance. "Do you want to get stronger?" Daniel asked. She hesitated. Her entire life, the Xel'Orath way had failed her. Maybe it was time to try something else. She took a deep breath. "Yes." Daniel grinned. "Then let's begin." Vena returned to the holding cell the next day. She wasn't sure why. Maybe it was because Daniel had spoken to her like an equal, not like she was useless. Maybe it was because she was tired of being weak. Daniel was waiting for her, leaning against the wall with the same calm expression. I wasn't sure you'd come back, he said. Vena folded her arms. You said you could help me. I want to see if you're telling the truth. Daniel nodded. All right. First, tell me, how do your people fight? She frowned. We use strength, power. We train with heavy weapons, build our muscles, and fight until only the strongest survive. Daniel sighed. And how's that working out for you? Vena clenched her jaw. She knew what he meant. No matter how much she trained, she never got stronger like the others. Her body was different. Daniel smirked. That's your problem. Your people think strength is just muscles, but real strength comes from more than that. Vena narrowed her eyes. Then what is real strength? Daniel leaned forward. Speed, precision, strategy. A strong arm can swing a sword, but a smart fighter can win before the sword is even drawn. She listened carefully. This was new. No Xel'Rath had ever spoken like this. Daniel stood up and stretched. Let's start with something simple. Vena looked around. You are in a cell. How can you train me from there? Daniel grinned. Watch closely. Before she could react, he moved. His body shifted slightly, just enough to change his stance. His feet were positioned in a way that made his balance perfect. He raised a fist, not with brute force, but with control. Then, in a single motion, he struck the air. His punch was fast, precise, and completely silent. Vena blinked. She had seen Xel'Rath warriors train, but their movements were loud and aggressive. This was different. It was efficient. You see, Daniel asked, power isn't about swinging wildly. It's about using the right amount of force, at the right time, in the right place. Vena nodded slowly. Teach me. Daniel smiled. First, your stance. She tried to copy the way he stood, but it felt unnatural. Her people always fought with wide, aggressive stances. This was smaller, controlled. Good, Daniel said. Now, balance your weight. Keep your feet steady. You need to move fast without wasting energy. Vena adjusted her posture. She felt strange, but Daniel nodded in approval. Now, a punch isn't just swinging your arm, Daniel explained. It comes from your whole body. Your legs, your core, your shoulders. Try it. She followed his instructions and threw a punch. It felt weaker than usual. Daniel chuckled. You're still thinking like a Xel'Rath. Forget brute force. Focus on speed and precision. Vena tried again. This time, she moved faster, using her whole body. Daniel nodded. Better. Now, again. She repeated the movement. Again. And again. For hours, she practiced simple strikes, footwork, and balance. Daniel corrected her form, giving advice where needed. By the time she left, her body ached, but for the first time in her life, she felt like she was actually learning something useful. The next few days followed the same pattern. Vena trained in secret, away from the other soldiers. She returned to Daniel's cell each day, learning more. She discovered that humans relied on intelligence in battle. They studied their enemies, found weaknesses, and used them to their advantage. One day, Daniel asked, Have you ever thought about why your people lose battles against humans? Vena frowned. We don't lose. The Xel'Rath Empire is powerful. Daniel smirked. Is that what they tell you? She hesitated. She had heard rumors. Stories of human soldiers outmaneuvering Xel'Rath warriors, defeating them despite being weaker. But she had never believed them. Daniel leaned against the bars of his cell. Your people rely on brute force. But humans, we adapt. We learn. We don't fight harder. We fight smarter. Vena was beginning to understand. One evening, she stood before a training dummy in the empty storage hall. She took her stance, balanced her weight, and focused. She struck. The punch landed exactly where she intended. Fast, controlled, and sharp. A thrill ran through her. For the first time in her life, she felt powerful. and she had a human to thank for it. Vena stood outside Daniel's cell, her heart still racing from the previous night's training. For the first time in her life, she had landed a perfect strike. It wasn't about strength. It was about control. She wanted more. Daniel sat on the floor, his hands resting on his knees, watching her with amusement. "You look different today," he said. Vena frowned. "What do you mean?" Daniel tilted his head. "You're standing taller. More confidence, less doubt." She hadn't noticed it, but he was right. Training with him had changed something inside her. She no longer felt like the weak princess her people mocked. "I want to continue," she said. Daniel grinned. "Then let's get serious." The first test. Vena expected more lessons about balance and control, but today, Daniel had something else planned. "Hit me," he said. She blinked. "What?" Daniel stepped forward, standing just outside the bars of his cell. "You've practiced your strikes. Now let's see if you can actually land one." Vena hesitated. She had been training with a lifeless dummy, but Daniel was a real opponent. He raised an eyebrow. "What's wrong?" "You scared." Anger flared in her chest. Without thinking, she threw a punch. Daniel moved. He didn't block or step back. He simply shifted his body, just enough to avoid the attack. Her fist sliced through the air, hitting nothing. Vena stumbled forward. Daniel smirked. Too slow. Frustrated, she tried again. And again. Each time, Daniel dodged with ease. "Your people fight in straight lines," he said, stepping aside as she missed another punch. Predictable. Brutal. But easy to read. Vena gritted her teeth. "Then how do I hit you?" Daniel tapped his temple. "Think before you strike. I know what you're going to do before you do it, so stop being predictable." She took a deep breath and analyzed his movements. He always leaned slightly to his left when dodging. Could she use that? She faked a right punch, then quickly shifted to a left strike. Daniel's eyes widened slightly. He had expected her usual attack, but she had changed it. Her fist connected lightly with his shoulder. She had done it. Daniel chuckled. Not bad. Vena allowed herself a small smile. Beyond strength. Over the next few weeks, their training continued in secret. Vena learned that fighting wasn't just about who was stronger. It was about who was smarter. Daniel taught her how to move efficiently, how to conserve energy, and how to predict an opponent's actions. He showed her how to fight without relying on brute strength. One night, he asked, "Do you know why your father fears humans?" Vena frowned. "He doesn't fear them. He sees them as weak." Daniel laughed. "Then why does he keep prisoners like me alive?" She had never thought about that. That Telarath usually executed their enemies. Why was Daniel still here? "Because we fight differently," Daniel continued. "Your father knows that brute force isn't enough to beat us. And now you're learning the same." Vena clenched her fists. If that was true, then why had her people never changed? Why did they still believe strength was everything? She wanted to prove them wrong. The first challenge. One evening, as she left the training hall, she heard voices. A group of Telarath warriors stood nearby, laughing. She recognized one of them. Commander Vork, a powerful fighter known for his ruthless nature. "I heard the princess spends her nights in the prisoner's hall," one warrior said, smirking. "Maybe she enjoys the company of weaklings." Vork chuckled. "Let her play with the human. It won't change anything. She will always be a failure." Vena's blood boiled, but she forced herself to stay calm. She was not the same person she had been before. She would not lash out in anger like a mindless brute. Instead, she stepped forward. "If I am so weak, then fight me." The warriors turned, surprised. Vork grinned. "You? Fight me?" Vena nodded. "Or are you afraid?" The other warriors laughed, but Vork's eyes darkened. He would not ignore a challenge, even from someone he considered beneath him. "Fine," he said. "Tomorrow, at dawn." As he walked away, Vena exhaled slowly. This was it. The first real test of her training. And she would not fail. The training ground was silent as Vena stepped forward. The sky above Uranine was still dark, with only a faint glow on the horizon. The Xel'Rath warriors stood in a circle, waiting to witness the fight. Vorik stood across from her, arms crossed, a smug smile on his face. He was a true Xel'Rath warrior, tall, powerful, and confident. "I will end this quickly," Vorik said, cracking his knuckles. "You should not have come here, princess." Vena ignored him. She had trained for this. She had learned from Daniel. This was her chance to prove herself. The commander in charge of the outpost raised his hand. "Begin." Vorik moved instantly, faster than Vena expected. He swung a powerful fist toward her. Vena didn't try to block it. She moved. She sidestepped at the last second, the air brushing past her face as his punch missed. The crowd murmured in surprise. Vorik frowned. Lucky. He attacked again, throwing another punch, followed by a heavy kick. Vena dodged both, her body light, her mind focused. She wasn't trying to meet his strength, she was avoiding it. Daniel's words echoed in her head. "You don't need to be stronger, you just need to be smarter." Vorik growled and rushed forward, trying to grab her. This time, Vena acted. She ducked under his arms and struck his side with her fist. It wasn't a strong hit, but it was precise. Vorik grunted and took a step back. His expression changed. He wasn't smiling anymore. The watching warriors whispered among themselves. The fight continued. Vorik attacked, but Vena was faster. She dodged, countered, and made him work harder than he expected. His movements became sloppier. He was using too much energy, while Vena stayed controlled. Finally, as Vorik swung his fist in frustration, Vena made her move. She sidestepped, grabbed his arm, and twisted. Using his own momentum against him, she pulled his body forward, and then delivered a sharp kick to the back of his knee. Vorik fell. Silence. The mighty warrior was on the ground, gasping in shock. Vena stood over him, her breath steady. The Xel'Rath warriors stared in disbelief. She had won. She had defeated Vorik. For the first time in her life, she had proven that she was not weak. But then, a loud roar filled the air. Vorik jumped to his feet, his eyes burning with rage. "No," he bellowed. "This is not over." Before Vena could react, he charged at her, fists clenched. He wasn't fighting to win anymore. He was fighting because of his pride. Vena braced herself, but before he reached her, "Enough." The deep voice cut through the air like a blade. Everyone froze. Vena turned slowly. Her father, King Torvek, stood at the edge of the training ground. The Xel'Rath warriors immediately bowed their heads. Even Vorik took a step back, his anger fading into fear. Vena's heart pounded. The king was here. Torvek stepped forward, his eyes locked on his daughter. His face was unreadable. "You fought well," he said finally. Vena's breath caught in her throat. Her father had never praised her before. But then, his expression hardened. "But you fight like a human." The words hit her like a heavy blow. Whispers spread through the crowd. Torvek's gaze burned into her. "This is not the Xel'Rath way," he said. "We do not dodge. We do not fight with tricks. Strength is what matters." Vena clenched her fists. "I won." Torvek's face darkened. "And yet, you used dishonorable methods. You disgrace your people." Anger boiled inside her. After everything, after proving herself, he still saw her as a failure. She opened her mouth to argue, but Torvek raised his hand. "You want to prove your worth," he said. "Then you will face a real test." The air grew tense. "The great tournament is in 3 days," Torvek continued. "A battle where only the strongest survive." Murmurs of shock rippled through the warriors. The great tournament was a brutal event where Xel'Arath warriors fought to the death. Only the best entered. Torvek's eyes locked onto her. If you truly believe in your way of fighting, then survive. Vena's heart pounded. This was not a duel. This was not training. This was war. But she refused to back down. She lifted her chin. I accept. Torvek turned without another word and walked away. The crowd slowly dispersed, whispering among themselves. Vena exhaled, her hands shaking. As she turned to leave, she felt a presence behind her. Daniel. He had been watching. He said nothing, but his expression told her everything. She had made her choice. Now, she had to survive. Vena stood in the dimly lit corridor, her heart pounding. The great tournament, a brutal event where warriors fought for survival, was just 3 days away. She had no illusions about what awaited her. The tournament was not a test of skill. It was a bloodbath. Her father, King Torvek, had thrown her into this challenge not to test her strength, but to prove that her way of fighting was weak. Vena clenched her fists. He wants me to fail, but I won't. She had trained with Daniel for weeks. She had learned how to fight differently. Smarter, faster, better. But was it enough? A familiar voice interrupted her thoughts. You look like someone just handed you a death sentence. She turned. Daniel leaned against the cold metal bars of his cell, arms crossed, watching her with sharp eyes. I have 3 days, Vena said. 3 days to prepare for the hardest fight of my life. Daniel nodded slowly. Then we don't have time to waste. Training in the shadows. That night, Vena returned to the holding cell. Daniel was already waiting, his posture relaxed, but his eyes serious. You've learned how to move, he said. You've learned how to dodge, how to strike with precision. But that won't be enough in the tournament. Vena frowned. Why? Daniel gestured for her to sit. She did. The tournament isn't just about fighting, he explained. It's about survival. You won't just be facing one opponent. You'll be facing many. Stronger, faster, more experienced warriors. She already knew this, but hearing it from him made the reality heavier. So what do I do? She asked. Daniel smirked. You do what humans do best. You adapt. He picked up a small metal cup from the floor and tossed it toward her. She caught it easily. What's the strongest thing in a fight? He asked. Vena answered without hesitation. Strength. Daniel shook his head. No, the strongest thing in a fight is the mind. She frowned. Explain. Daniel leaned forward. Most warriors enter battle thinking about how to fight. But the best warriors think about when to fight, where to fight, and most importantly, why to fight. Vena slowly nodded, trying to understand. In the tournament, Daniel continued, you don't need to beat everyone. You just need to survive. That means knowing when to engage and when to step back. It means using the battlefield itself as a weapon. Vena listened carefully. The other warriors will expect brute strength, Daniel said. They will charge, attack without thinking. That's their weakness. You need to let them destroy themselves. She exhaled slowly. How? Daniel smiled. By doing what they don't expect. The night before battle. For the next 2 days, Vena trained harder than ever. Daniel taught her how to use the battlefield, how to control her movements, how to outlast her opponents. She practiced dodging, not just punches, but entire patterns of attack. She learned to be unpredictable, to move in ways her enemies wouldn't expect. And most importantly, she learned when not to fight. By the time the second night arrived, she was exhausted but ready. She stood outside Daniel's cell one last time before the tournament. You've learned well, Daniel said. Better than I expected. Vena smirked. I had a good teacher. Daniel chuckled, but then his expression grew serious. Vena, when you enter that arena, there's something you must remember. She waited. You are not fighting for them. Not for your father. Not for your people. His eyes locked onto hers. "You're fighting for you." She felt something shift inside her. For years, she had trained, hoping to prove herself to the Xel'Rath, to her father, to the warriors who mocked her. But now she realized she didn't need their approval. She was fighting for herself. Vena nodded. "I understand." Daniel smiled. "Good. Now go win this thing. The arena awaits." The next morning, the great tournament began. The arena was massive, a circular battleground filled with obstacles, weapons, and towering walls. Thousands of Xel'Rath watched from the stands, cheering, waiting for the battle to begin. Vena stood among 20 other warriors, all ready to kill for glory. Across the arena, she spotted Vorik. His eyes burned with hatred. He was still furious about their last fight. King Torvek sat on his throne, watching with a cold, unreadable expression. A loud drum echoed through the air. The battle was about to begin. Vena exhaled, steadying her breath. She was ready. The tournament was meant to destroy her, but they had no idea what she had become. Let them come. She would show them all. The drums thundered. Vena tightened her fists as the arena roared with the sounds of warriors ready to fight. Around her, 20 of the strongest Xel'Rath fighters prepared themselves. Some cracked their knuckles, some stretched their muscles, and others simply watched their opponents with cold, sharp eyes. Above them, King Torvek sat on his throne, his gaze locked onto Vena. His expression showed no emotion. A loud voice boomed across the arena. "Let the tournament begin." The ground shook as the warriors charged. Vena did not move. Daniel's words echoed in her mind. "You don't need to be the strongest. You just need to be the smartest." Instead of rushing into the chaos, she stepped back, watching. The battle was brutal. Warriors collided like wild beasts, the air filled with the sounds of fists hitting flesh, bones cracking, and weapons clashing. She saw Vorik, her old opponent, slam his fists into another warrior's chest, sending him flying across the arena. Vorik was strong, but he fought with anger, wasting his energy. Vena knew she couldn't fight him head-on. She needed to outlast them all. The strategy of survival. Vena stayed on the move, weaving through the battlefield, dodging attacks. She let the stronger warriors fight each other first, knowing that the more they fought, the weaker they would become. One warrior, a massive brute with sharp claws, spotted her. "You, weakling," he growled. He lunged at her, his claws slicing through the air. Vena ducked, sliding beneath his attack. As he turned, she grabbed a handful of sand from the ground and threw it into his eyes. He roared in pain, stumbling back. Vena used the opening to land a sharp kick to his leg, knocking him off balance. Before he could recover, another warrior attacked him from behind, taking him down. She had won without even fighting directly. Daniel was right. Let them destroy themselves. A dangerous opponent. Minutes passed, and the number of warriors decreased. Vena had taken down 2 opponents by using their own mistakes against them. But now she was running out of space. And then Vorik saw her. His golden eyes burned with fury. "You don't belong here," he growled, stepping toward her. The other warriors paused, watching. They knew Vorik was one of the strongest. This fight would decide everything. Vena took a slow breath. She would not run. Vorik charged, swinging his fist. Vena dodged, but barely. His attack was faster than before. He had learned from their last fight. He attacked again, forcing her backward. She kept moving, but the battlefield was closing around her. Then she saw it, a broken stone pillar behind her. She let Vorik push her toward it. As he threw another punch, she sidestepped at the last moment. Crack! His fist slammed into the pillar, the impact breaking the stone. Vorik grunted in pain, his hand shaking. Vena saw her chance. She spun and landed a precise kick to his injured hand. He roared in pain, stepping back. The crowd gasped. Vorik was still strong, but now he was wounded. His punches would be weaker. His confidence was shaken. Vena had turned the fight in her favor. The final phase. Only 5 warriors remained now. The others had either been defeated or eliminated. Vena stood among the survivors, her body sore, but her mind sharp. Vorik glared at her, breathing heavily. He was still dangerous, but now he was desperate. Above them, King Torvek leaned forward on his throne, watching closely. For the first time in her life, Vena saw something in his eyes. Not disappointment. Curiosity. The final battle was near, and Vena was ready. The arena was a battlefield of dust, blood, and broken warriors. The once crowded ground was now nearly empty. Only 5 fighters remained. Vena stood among them, breathing heavily. She had outlasted most of the warriors by using speed, intelligence, and patience. But now, the real challenge began. Across from her, Vorik was still standing. His right hand was bruised from punching the stone pillar, but his fury had not faded. The other 3 warriors were just as deadly. A tall, armored Xel'Arath named Dran stood with his arms crossed, his silver skin covered in scars. He had fought like a machine, eliminating 3 opponents without taking much damage. Next to him was Kale, a quick and agile fighter with a blade attached to his wrist. He moved like a shadow, attacking and disappearing before his opponents could react. The last warrior, Boran, was the largest of them all. His body was covered in thick muscles, and his weapon of choice was a heavy warhammer. He had crushed his enemies with pure brute force. Vena knew that she couldn't fight them all at once. She needed to think fast. Above them, King Torvek watched in silence. The crowd had grown restless, eager to see the next battle. The voice of the arena master echoed across the air. Only one will stand victorious. Begin. Choosing the right fight, Boran roared and charged toward Dran, swinging his hammer. The impact shook the ground as Dran barely dodged in time. Kale disappeared in a blur of movement, trying to find an opening to strike. That left Vena and Vorik. Their eyes met. Vorik's fists clenched. "You won't survive this, weakling." Vena didn't reply. She focused. Vorik attacked first, rushing forward like an unstoppable force. But she was ready. She sidestepped at the last moment, making him miss. Vorik growled and turned back quickly, but before he could attack again, Kale struck. A sharp slash appeared across Vorik's arm as Kal's blade cut him. Vorik stumbled back, eyes burning with rage. Vena smirked. Perfect. She had forced Vorik into a position where someone else attacked him. Now, he was injured even more. Kale disappeared again, moving toward Dran and Boran. Vena took a breath. She had to be smart. Let the others weaken each other first. The arena turns red. The battle between Dran, Boran, and Kale was intense. Dran blocked Boran's hammer with his thick arms, countering with a punch that sent Boran stumbling back. Kale darted between them, his blade cutting whenever he saw an opening. But Boran was strong, too strong. With a mighty swing, he slammed his hammer into the ground, sending shockwaves through the arena. The impact caught Kale off guard. Before he could escape, Boran grabbed him by the throat and threw him across the battlefield. Kale crashed into a broken pillar, his body going limp. The first warrior was down. Now, only 4 remained. Vena took a deep breath. Her moment was coming. A dangerous alliance. Vorik's breathing was heavy. His arm was bleeding, and his hand was still weak. He knew he wouldn't last long against Boran or Dran in this state. That's when he did something unexpected. He turned to Vena. "We take them down first," he said. "Then we finish this." Vena hesitated. She didn't trust Vorik. But she knew that fighting both Dran and Boran at the same time was suicide. She nodded. For now, they had a common enemy. Vorik charged at Boran, attacking with reckless strength. Vena went for Dran, using her speed to strike his weak spots. The battle became a storm of movement and power. Boran fought back with terrifying strength, his hammer swinging wildly. But Vorik was relentless, using his rage to keep pushing forward. Meanwhile, Vena dodged Dran's heavy blows, countering with quick, precise strikes. Then, the moment arrived. Dran made a mistake. He swung too hard, missing his target. Vena saw her chance. She dashed forward, leaped into the air, and landed a powerful kick to his head. Dran stumbled. Before he could recover, Boran's hammer smashed into his chest. Dran collapsed to the ground. Now, only 3 warriors remained. Vena, Vorik, Boran. The crowd exploded with excitement. Above them, King Torvek leaned forward, watching with sharp eyes. Vena's heart pounded. The final battle was near, and she was still standing. The arena was silent for a moment. Only 3 warriors remained. Vena stood on one side, her breathing steady, but her body aching from battle. Vorik was opposite her, his face covered in sweat and dust, his injured arm still bleeding. And then there was Boran, the strongest warrior still standing. His massive form towered over both of them, his muscles flexing as he gripped his warhammer tightly. Above them, King Torvek watched with cold eyes. The crowd was roaring in excitement. The tournament was almost over. Only 1 warrior would remain. The final battle had begun. Breaking the giant, Boran smiled. "You 2 are weak. This will be easy." Without waiting, he charged. His hammer swung toward Vorik first. Vorik barely dodged, rolling to the side, but the impact shattered the ground where he had been standing. Vena took the opportunity and dashed forward, aiming for Boran's side. She struck with speed, landing a sharp kick to his ribs. It was like kicking a wall. Boran barely flinched. With a roar, he swung his hammer toward her. Vena had no time to think. She jumped back, but the shockwave of the hammer's impact still sent her stumbling. Vorik attacked next, using his brute strength to land a heavy punch on Boran's back. The giant warrior grunted in pain but didn't fall. Instead, he turned and grabbed Vorik by the neck. Vorik struggled, his feet leaving the ground. Boran smirked. Too easy. He threw Vorik across the arena like a ragdoll. Vorik crashed into the dirt, groaning in pain. Vena knew they were in trouble. Boran was too strong. She had to find another way. A different approach. Vena's mind raced. Brute strength won't work. I need to use something else. She looked around the arena. The ground was cracked from Boran's hammer. There were broken pillars and loose stones everywhere. An idea formed in her mind. She ran toward Boran. He smiled. Finally, you're ready to fight. She didn't attack directly. Instead, she dodged his hammer swings, moving quickly between the broken stones. Vorik slowly got up and saw what she was doing. He understood. Vena was leading Boran to unstable ground. Vorik gritted his teeth. He hated working with Vena, but he had no choice. As Boran swung his hammer again, Vorik rushed in from the side, aiming a powerful punch at Boran's knee. The giant warrior stumbled. Vena moved fast. She jumped onto a broken pillar, using it to leap high into the air. With all her strength, she landed a powerful kick to Boran's head. The impact sent him crashing onto the unstable ground. Crack! The earth beneath Boran collapsed. The crowd gasped as the massive warrior fell into a deep pit, created by the broken arena floor. Boran struggled to climb out, but his own weight and strength worked against him. He had fallen into his own trap. The tournament guards stepped forward. Boran was out. Now, only 2 warriors remained. Vena, Vorik. The final fight. Vena landed on the ground, her breathing heavy. Vorik wiped blood from his mouth and stood up straight. They stared at each other. Only one of them could win. Vorik smirked. I won't lose to you. Vena raised her fists. Then come and fight. The crowd roared as the final battle began. Vorik charged first, his speed fueled by anger. He threw a powerful punch toward Vena's face. She dodged at the last second, countering with a sharp elbow to his ribs. Vorik grunted but didn't stop. He spun and aimed a kick at her head. Vena blocked, but the force sent her sliding backward. They clashed again. Fists, kicks, dodges. It was a battle of skill and endurance. Vena had the speed. Vorik had the strength. They fought like equals. But Vena knew something Vorik didn't. He was wasting energy. Each attack he missed made him tired. Each attack she landed made her stronger. Slowly, Vorik's attacks became slower. His movements were less precise. Vena saw her opening. She ducked under his next punch and delivered a devastating strike to his knee. Vorik collapsed onto one leg, his balance broken. She didn't stop. With a final, powerful spinning kick, she struck the side of his head. Vorik's body twisted. He fell, and he didn't get up. Silence filled the arena. Then, the crowd erupted in cheers. Vena stood tall, her chest rising and falling. She had done it. She had won. Above her, King Torvek slowly stood. His eyes locked onto her, and for the first time he nodded. Vena clenched her fists. She had not only survived, she had proven them all wrong. The arena was still shaking with the sound of the cheering crowd. Vena stood in the center, breathing heavily, her body aching from the battle. Sweat dripped from her forehead, but she remained standing, because she had won. Vorik lay on the ground, unconscious. The strongest warriors of the Xel'Arath had fallen, and only she remained. The impossible had happened. A weak princess had defeated the greatest fighters in the kingdom. Above her, King Torvek slowly rose from his throne. His golden eyes stared at her, unreadable. Then he raised his hand. The arena fell silent. Vena's heart pounded. She had won. But what would happen now? Would the king accept her victory? Or would he refuse to acknowledge it? A moment of truth. Torvek's deep voice echoed through the arena. Vena, step forward. She swallowed hard and took slow, steady steps toward the royal platform. The warriors standing near the king, his most loyal commanders, watched her with suspicion. She knew they didn't believe in her. They didn't want her to win. But she didn't care. She had earned this. When she reached the platform, she stopped and bowed her head, waiting for the king's judgment. Torvek studied her. Then his voice came again. Do you know why this tournament exists? Vena lifted her head. To prove who is the strongest. The king nodded. Yes, the strongest. And yet, his eyes narrowed. You do not fight like a Xel'Arath. Vena felt a spark of fear, but she held her ground. She couldn't show weakness now. She took a deep breath. I fight to win, father. It doesn't matter how. Only the result matters. For a long moment, the king said nothing. Then he laughed. The sound was deep and powerful, shaking the air around them. Some of the warriors looked shocked. Others exchanged nervous glances. Vena remained still, waiting. Finally, Torvek stepped closer to her. Tell me, daughter, where did you learn to fight like this? Vena's fingers clenched. She had expected this question. She had trained in secret. She had learned from Daniel, a human, a species that the Xel'Arath considered weak. If she told the truth, what would the king do? She took a slow breath, and then she looked straight into her father's eyes. I trained with a human, she said. A ripple of shock went through the arena. Some warriors gasped. Others whispered. Even the king's commanders looked unsettled. A human. A Xel'Arath princess had trained with a human. The king's smile faded. His expression became unreadable again. Then he spoke. A human trained you, and you still defeated my best warriors. Vena lifted her chin. Yes. Silence. Then Torvek threw back his head and laughed again. The crowd didn't know what to do. They had never seen their king react this way. Finally, he looked at Vena once more. "This is interesting," he said. "Very interesting." He turned to the arena. "Today, my daughter has proven that strength is not just about power. She has shown intelligence. She has shown patience. She has shown victory." The crowd erupted into cheers again. Torvek raised his hand for silence. He looked at Vena once more. "You are no longer weak, Vena." Then, in a loud voice, he declared, "From this day forward, you are the champion of the Xel'Rath. A new beginning." Vena felt a weight lift from her chest. She had not only won, she had been accepted. She had proven herself to her people. For the first time in her life, she wasn't seen as weak. She was a warrior. As she stood there, letting the reality sink in, she thought of Daniel. He had trained her. He had believed in her. And now, because of him, she had done the impossible. One day, she would find him again. She would thank him, and she would show him what she had become. For now, she stood tall as the strongest warrior in the kingdom. The human way had changed everything, and nothing would ever be the same again.